I'm Chris Ryan. I'm the guy that walked out to Syria during the first Gulf War. For the regiment, it was quite unique because we were a small cog in a large engine. We were told just to sit and wait, fast air will go in, American bombers will go in, and there's the possibility that we may not deploy. The Iraqis kept sending scuds across into various other countries, and they were worried that Israel would get drawn in. We had very little information on terrain, the area, the weather, borders, anything. In fact, my map dated back to 1944. The smock I was wearing was from Second World War issue, so equipment was minimal. I can remember getting onto the helicopter and my QM was next to me and I said, "This is a one-way ticket." There was a young goat herder bringing us flock of goats, and he came walking up. He basically walked close to our position that day, then got onto a truck, disappeared. The next day he came in and he was definitely searching around the wadis, and he looked down into the wadi and he saw one of the guys and he ran off and brought in a local militia. There was a firefight and they started shooting at us, and then it all kicked off. It was 11:30 at night. Couldn't see anything. I tried calling on the TACP radio, nothing. I waited till 12 o'clock and then called again and there was nothing. So I just said to the guys, we're gonna have to just keep walking. We only had 2 weapons. I had one and Vince had one. And I knew we were in a bad place. I wasn't interested in the Iraqi army. I knew the problem we were going to have is the cold and the weather. When you consider we have 2 guys in this graveyard who died of hypothermia, they froze to death. I was with one guy as he was dying, Vince, and I tried everything to try, convince him to keep moving, and yeah, it was just a disaster. The main enemy was the weather. I ran out of water the first night when I was on the run, so that meant I had to get to the Euphrates. Didn't have any food. I lost all my food in my rucksack. So it was 7 days without food. The last 3 days without water. I'd actually drank some water that was from a chemical plant, and it was full of effluent, which burnt my mouth. So the next three nights I had nothing, and I was walking about 40 kilometers a night. And what happened was I started hallucinating and seeing visions of my daughter, and it was that vivid. I was putting my hand out to get a hold of her, and she was talking to me, and I could see the rocks moving, could hear it. I eventually crossed the border, but I wasn't 100% sure that it was the real border, and carried on walking, and then finally collapsed against a wall. I'd broken my nose, and when I came to in the distance, I could see a small house with smoke coming out, and I thought, well, I've got to get water because I'm going to die today if I don't. I had cold injuries. I'd lost 38 pounds in weight. My feet, no toenails. There was pus coming out of all the areas where it blistered. I had what do you call bed sores on my body, damaged liver. During the 7 days and 8 nights, all the physical damage happened during that period. All the mental problems I had were about to unfold in Syria. I mean, the area that I was walking through was the Anbar region, and they were fiercely loyal to the Saddam regime. Now, every day I was focused on crossing that border, and that was my goal. Even when I was actually, lying on the desert floor, crying because I couldn't go on, picking myself up, moving on, it was that border. I knew I'd be safe when I crossed that border. Naively, the people in that region don't recognize the borders. They've lived there for thousands of years, the tribes. So I wasn't going to find any friendlies. And certainly in that town, they looked at me with hatred. It wasn't until I ended up with the secret police in Damascus that I was shown any type of kindness or care. All the lads that left, there's, Legs is here. I wasn't with him when he died, but yeah, I know how he died and where he died. And when you come to like a place like this, you know the backdrop. I know the backdrop to nearly most of the guys that are lying here. Some of them were very good friends of mine, so I'll see their faces. I'll see, times we spent together, funny times, and as well as sad times. It's war, and it's the fog of war, the confusion of war. We were getting out there to get into a scrap, and yes, mistakes were made, but one thing with the regiment is they tried to learn from the mistakes. So there wouldn't be any more young men having to walk 7 days, and 8 nights. So you've got to take the positive sides. When it goes wrong with the SAS, usually it goes tragically wrong, and that's what happens when the Special Forces makes mistakes. Usually the cost of life is very high.